Welcome to another exciting episode, spellbinding episode of Tim Time. My good friend Chris had commented that I didn't show using the tube tester when I checked the tube last time on the TS820, that tube right there. So what it is, it's a Hickok model 752 tube tester, and I'll give you the rundown of it real quick. So you're going to get a little bit dizzy when I take you off the camera or off the pedestal. I got to flip this around. So let me zoom out so you can kind of get a look at everything. This does multiple tests. It'll do a life test, it'll do a short test, a tube test. Right here, this doohickey here, as you see, it's a scroll chart for all the tubes. Now unfortunately on mine, there's two gears that run the scrolls like the old Tom Cryers used to have. And there's two gears that run it. One of the gears is broken. So I can go one way, but in order to go the other way, I actually have to take the screws out, lift it up, and do it by hand. So I have a tendency now, whenever I run a tube test, I just mark down what all the settings are. And these give you all the settings for the pins, and when you look here, you correspond it with that. The numbers right here, like for instance for this tube here, you would set it at the filament voltage 4.3 volts, that's up there. And then you set all these lower switches at the corresponding 8 numbers there, and then it tells you if there's going to be a bias and a shunt, what they would be, and then there's multipliers for the tube test, and it tells you what buttons to push. So if you have one of these and you find it, make sure you read the instructions completely about the tube you're going to test, because sometimes there's notes at the end if it's a dull tube that might tell you how to test it, or sometimes there may be different settings for part A and part B of the tube. So make sure you always read the notes for that. And this one came with some pretty neat books here, actually. It has a obsolete tube types, and you can, I don't know if that's zooming in on that with the color, but you can find some pretty neat tubes in it, and also a lot of European tube, foreign tube types. But a lot of times I also just look on the internet because somebody has uploaded one of these scrolls to the internet and I can find that. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through the test, just some of the tests I did on this 12BY7A, I believe that's what it was. It's a pentode amplifier, and we'll get you set up and we'll start. Alrighty, so we're going to flip the switch on first, give this a second or two to warm up. This does have tubes in it. I actually got this a long time ago. Somebody gave it to me, and it sat for years before I ever even really used it. So I did go through it. I think there's a couple of power supply capacitors I replaced. There's very few. I think it has 2 vacuum tubes in it, and mainly it was just cleaning all the switches. It looks like a whole bunch of octopus fighting with all these switches. There's just wires everywhere. So one of the things I want to do is, and I wanted to make sure Chris knew this, that these vacuum tubes, they get really hot, so they actually shrink. So I have to put it on my vacuum tube expander. So just give me a second to bring it back expanded. Okay, Chris, so I think I expanded it too much. Got way too big, Chris. I'm not sure what I can do. Just kidding. Here's the tube. I just had to do that. I have my Chris 2.0, Steve's here, my handy assistant. I handed him that too. So anyhow, I already have this set for this the 12BY7. Let me just double check. So the filament voltage is set at 12.6 volts up here. That's one of my filament options. And then going straight across, it's 4520, 4520, 7813 is that. Now for the bias, it's telling me 0, and then for shunt, it doesn't matter. Now it wants me to put the multiplier on the ×10 scale. So that's just this guy here, it's already on the ×10, and we're going to put it on tube test. So now I'm going to plug the tube into one of these. I already know which one it is. We'll put it there. So you saw when I first put it in, it kind of flashed telling me that's a line fuse. And it flashed a little bit telling me that the load increased, which it did, because the heaters are heating up in the tube. So first thing I want to do is I want to adjust the line voltage, and there's a little, let me see if I can bring you over here and show you the It's going to be hard. I might have to get my trusty assistant to hold the camera. Action. Okay, so first thing you want to do is there's a button down here I'll push, and this is going to say line, and when I do, you'll see right there, you can adjust this potentiometer over here to move your line up and down. That's pretty close to being on. The tube's been in probably for, at least I'd say close to a minute. So it's telling me here that I want to push S5, and the mutual conductance should be over here on this where it says micromos. It should be at least 500. So let's see, where's S5? Right here. So you see that's going up to probably close to 800. But as you saw, when we did this originally, this didn't work right on 10 meters. The new tube I put in was up there past, it was past 1,000, it was about 1250. There's also other tests you can do with this. Multiple other tests. Being this is an amplifier, there's I think we can do a gas test with it, and we can also do a short test. So I'll show you how to do the short test here in a second. So you can pause that. Okay, I've never actually had the leakage test done, but what the instructions say to do is basically move it from position, this right here where it says leakage, move it off the tube test and move it from positions 1 through 6 while tapping on the tube and watching over here to see if that moves. They say you may get a little bit of deflection, but if you get any noticeable deflection, it could indicate a problem. So you're tapping on the tube and you're looking for basically any movement of that needle as you go through these. The positions short together, not short together, it's kind of like putting the ohm meter on different terminals of the tube, and then you're hitting it to just see if it vibrates and maybe something touches something that shouldn't. So far so good. So okay, that takes care of the leakage test. So the other one is going to be the gas test, and I got to look that up real quick to see how I do that. Yet. Okay, so for the gas test, what we had to do is put this on the X2 scale, and then we start with this filament adjustment. It says to run it up to 100, and then push the S6 button. And as you're doing that, you're going to come over here and watch this, and I want you to bring it up to about 100. So if this, and they're talking about on a 0 to 3000 scale, so that's 0 to 1500, so basically it'll be doubled. So we're going to bring it up to the first line down. So I'm going to bring it up. If I turn the bias back towards 0, away from the 100, you'll see that that starts to move up. So actually any of those lines in there, but I want to get a line, a good starting point. So right there. So we're watching that. So that's actually the number 200 line. I'm going to let this go. We're going to push down again. My finger was getting tired. So now at the same time I want to push the S7. If that goes up more than 2 spots, 2 of those little divisions, then they're telling me the tube has gas. Must ate beans. The tube has gas. It says that 2 divisions is acceptable or negligible, as they say, but this goes up a little bit more than 2 divisions. It's actually just about 2 divisions exactly. So I'm going to try a different tube and we'll see what happens. Let me pull this guy out. You still rolling? Oh, okay. So that tube there, we'll give that about 30 seconds to warm up. We have Steve being the cameraman because Chris said he just couldn't handle it. So I'm going to start this now by hitting the S6 and see where we come. Right about the same thing. Let's see. So I'm going to hit the S7. Well, let me turn that down so I can get it to a nice starting point. So I'm going to hit the S7 at the same time. That goes up a little bit less. So again, those are probably negligible. As that's, I think that's the word that the manual uses. But this is the other tube like I showed you, and I'm actually going to do the tube test real quick and show you. It's on the S5 or on the times 10, and we hit the S. Was it S5? Yeah. And Oop, I got to turn this all the way back down to 0. And there we go. So that one's actually testing about 1,000. So that one would probably work pretty good too. But like I said, you could see with it on the other radio that when it was in the radio, up to 28 megahertz, or it was still working pretty good at 21 megahertz. When we got to 28, it started to die off, and it was only producing about half power. So that's probably one of the symptoms when that tube starts to go bad. So anyhow, that's using the model 752 Hickock Tube Tester, and it works great. Most people, back in the day, you'd go into a thrift drugstore or any of your local drugstores, and they had a big, basically setup like this, and you'd plug your tubes. You take the tubes out of your television or radio that wasn't working, you'd go up there and plug them in and test them in the tube tester, and they'd mainly just give you a life test, and it would tell you if your tube was working. Then you go right up to the person working the counter and say, hey, I need one of these, 6x6s or something, 6L6s or whatever, and they'd go and open it up and ring you up for 79 cents for a new tube. And you'd go home and plug it into the radio. Well, the thing was, is these tubes they don't generally go bad unless something causes them to go bad. And usually that was indicative of a capacitor or something on the way out, or a resistor out of tolerance. So sure, you might plug the tube in and get some operation from it for a couple of days, but all in all, that wasn't the fix. So you'd call the television guy, and he would come to your house with all of his equipment, and he would work on your TV right there, and then probably give you a bill for like 39, 40 bucks. But he'd make your TV work, and he had a shop, of course, too. But that was for the real in-depth repairs. But anyhow, that's how you use this. And if you have one of these, like I said, make sure you read the manual, because there are some tubes that have different sections, and you may either have to change these halfway through a test, or when you've completed one section and you move on, you might see two different listings for the same tube, and you'll, gee, I wonder why. Well, that's because it might be a dual triode or something. Or some of them you can leave them the same, but you have to push this S8 button down, and that usually takes, when you have a dual something tube, you'd push the like the S5 button to test it, then you'd hit the S8 and the S5, and that would test the other side of it. So make sure that you look up the tubes and don't try and guess at them. So hope this helped anybody that has one of these, and Chris, I hope you enjoyed putting me out all this time so that you could see how this works. Thanks for watching.